Okay, Madam Clerk. My turn's ready. Tonight is a workshop on reliability and resilience options, undergrounding, and our purpose is twofold. One is to educate us where we are today with this situation, and I know we have dealt with this over many, many years, but this is where we are today, so let's educate ourselves on this, and especially everyone that may be watching this, so that we are all on the same page, and no decisions will be made tonight on this. This is an education process, and at the same time, an effort to let everyone know where we are now, and at some point, we'll decide where we want to go. But this is all we're doing tonight, so be plenty of time for questions and answers. And as we do in workshops, we'll spend time going through this. So with that, Mr. Manager, you want to walk us through the first?
Yeah, certainly, Mayor Rasko, I really appreciate it, and I really thank you for setting the stage here, because this really, tonight is intended to be a conversation. We really want to discuss the options that are put before us. Our job, we see that our job from staff and also FPL, and I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves in a second, is really to facilitate the conversation. So we think we've put together a pretty good process that walks you through information that will help you, number one, be educated, like you said, Mayor. Number two, learn to ask the questions we need to ask, and then begin to understand a direction we might want to go. So, like the Mayor said, we're not intending to walk out of here with a final decision, but we certainly want to be better prepared for the direction we want to go. So before we kick it off, I'd like to, I'll start with Nicole. Nicole, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Nicole Martinez. I am the customer advisor. So pretty much the central point of contact for the village. Oh, I'm sorry. Nicole Martinez, the customer advisor for Key Biscayne. I am with FPL, and I'm the central point of contact for the village and everything that they might need.
Eric Alonso, Florida Power and Light. I am the manager for the major governmental accounts in Miami-Dade County.
I'm Rod Silva. I'm the manager for the FPL Overhead Hardening Program, which is essentially the large poles and wires you see around. So that's what we do. We strengthen those so they withstand extreme wind loading like hurricanes.
John Crawford, project manager for overhead and underground conversions.
So we appreciate the FPL team being here. They definitely came in force. Thank you. Chris Ferreira, our major rep, as you know, Mayor Rasko, he is doing his leadership Florida duties today. So
Okay.
He's there today. So I think Julian gave me, there it is. So we're going to walk through this. So again, Mayor, you stated the purpose. I just want to reiterate that. Tonight we're just going to look at some undergrounding options. And we got to make sure that they align with our priorities. Obviously, resilience is one of those. Reliability, aesthetics, and long-term value. So as we go through that, those will be on our mind as we go through. These are pretty important. These are some of the key considerations that we've gleaned, not just over the last 2 months as we've been preparing for this, but also over the last many, many years as the village has been looking at how and when and what we would do to underground. Straight up front, you know, it states right there, we're committed. We're committed to undergrounding our power and telecommunication lines, and that's why we're here today. The second one, and again, that's one of the reasons that we have a bunch of the folks from FPL. They have offered to fully fund the hardening of our feeder lines and to begin as soon as possible if we decide to make that decision. Third, the FPL has a storm protection plan, and under that storm protection plan, they define or they call for a combination of hardened feeders and undergrounding laterals. With all this, all being good, we're talking power here. That can kind of lead you to the fact that anything we do for undergrounding telecommunications will be on our dime. And then last one, when it comes to infrastructure, we still need to keep in consideration that even when we do underground, and obviously aesthetics is one of our key criteria, I believe it is, and we'll find out as we get further in this conversation, there will be ground level equipment. So let's just make sure as we go through there that, vaults, transformers will still be in the village. And as much as we'd like everything to go away, there still will be the products of electrical equipment and telecommunications. Some of the community interests and challenges that we've heard from our community is, we've heard that they have an interest in full undergrounding, both the feeders and the laterals. And we've also seen over the summer and also the last few years, a growing frustration in the continued outages that we've had, not just the severe ones, which we experienced about 2 months ago, but also some of the smaller ones that we have, particularly over the last couple of weeks. And then lastly, general concern, and something that we've brought up and some other, residents have brought up, is the concern on the response time and the ability for FPL to be able to access their underground lines, and also the ability to restore those underground lines after a storm. So that kind of sets the conditions of the 6 or 7, maybe 8 key considerations that we've gathered over the last few weeks, few months. So let's jump into what we want to talk about today. And so with all that discussed and everything we've spoken with FPL, what we want to do is evaluate and talk about these 3 alternatives that you guys can see in front of you. First one is underground all, and that is feeders, laterals, and telecommunications. That would be one option that we'll look at. The next one is a hybrid model, and that is taking FPL's offer for them to harden our feeders. We would continue to underground our laterals, and then of course we would underground all the telecommunications. And the last one we threw in there just for kind of a reference point is the Storm Protection Program. You've heard of the SSUP before. I think this is what you guys are calling it now, the Storm Protection Program. You've heard the success that Coral Gables has said that they have and what they're doing. In fact, they're doing it out in front of my house right now. This is what they're doing. They're doing the SPP program. It's good when it's coming down your street because it's getting done for me, but this is a PSC-driven process based on the reliability of lines. It's fully funded by FPL. They harden the feeders, they underground the laterals, but it's done on their timeline, not on the village's timeline. And it's all paid by FPL. So those are the 3 alternatives that we're gonna look at today. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we give you kind of familiarity of what we're looking at across the village in terms of the conditions today. And I'm going to turn this over to you, Julian, or are we going to turn this over to Mike?
To me.
Okay, so Julian's got this.
So on the slides, you can see the current state of the village. On purple are the areas that have been undergrounded, and on orange the areas that have overhead utilities. And the red lines are existing overhead feeders, and based on the hybrid proposal or the storm protection proposal, those feeders will stay overheaded.
This is important. This is where we stand right now. So is it clear on where we stand? Purplish, I guess we'll call it that, is all completely undergrounded. Yellowish is what would still need to be underground if we choose to. And those red lines are critically important. Those are the feeder lines that are not undergrounded at this time.
Steve, for the public, maybe we should just define what these mean, the word lateral and feeder, because it's confusing to a lot of people what those actually are.
There's a slide in there about that, right?
They're, probably not to the level of detail that I think Councilmember Bracken is at. I'm going to actually have one of the FPL folks do that because they could probably do it a heck of a lot better than I can.
Sure, I'll take that one since I do the feeder. So think about the feeder as main power lines, arteries in your body, right? So your aorta, something large that feeds the majority of the body. And then the smaller capillaries on the body that feed extremities on the body, those are the laterals. So they're, from an electrical perspective, the feeders are protected by a larger device called a breaker. and these laterals are protected by a fuse. A lot of times when you hear power outages, you hear a loud boom. That's that fuse blowing, and what it does, it isolates a smaller part of the circuit so that not the entire circuit takes the brunt of the outage, just a smaller part of it. So the laterals are the smaller circuits, they're fused, and the feeders are the larger circuits.
So I'm sorry, in practical terms, we're discussing the large lines that are running down Crandon, for example, or around
Right.
Fernwood. We have a large line right now, Fernwood, but I'm talking about the ones in the back of people's houses. Those are what you're referring to as laterals, correct?
Laterals, that's correct.
So go ahead.
No, so go, I'm sorry. I think
That's why I just wanted to
So
make sure
ju-
people
and just for
understand what we're
clarity,
talking
if we were to go a hybrid route where we're talking about the feeders being above ground, they are represented by the red lines, correct? So that, all of that in red would remain overground
That is correct.
in the hybrid option,
Correct.
yeah?
about. And those are substantially tall concrete piles that are about 60 feet tall, correct?
They vary in height, but usually they can be wood, but they're typically concrete. Depending on the span, there's all kinds of technical things that dictate whether it needs to be concrete or wood. But yes, typically you'll find a concrete pole. 50, they're about 55, but they go about 11 feet in the ground. So really, the net you see up in the air is between 45 and 50 feet.
So twice the
Are those
height of a
feeders in
normal
the same
pole.
place they are now?
No,
Or would be in different position?
It's more or less the same height as it is now.
Do we have any?
Hold on. Ed, you want to repeat your question?
Yes, my question is, he showed us the map of where the existing feeders are today. My question is, would they be moved or would they just be replaced with high concrete poles versus wooden poles that are there today? And my second question is, would there be any transformers on these feeders, or would all the transformers be in the front of the house with the laterals?
Okay, so on the first question, the poles typically will go adjacent to the existing poles. They might be slightly higher. It could vary, but typically within 5 feet or so. I think that's a typical design that you would see, just
In
slightly
height.
higher than
So
what it is.
would the poles, the existing poles be removed?
Well, once you replace it with a new one, the old ones would be removed. Once the third parties, which are typically AT&T, Comcast, whoever the cable providers are, they all co-locate in the same pole. So FPL would do the transfer of our own facilities, and then there's other parties or other companies like AT&T, Comcast, or whoever, fiber, right? Whoever is attached on that pole as well, they would have to come afterwards, transfer their facilities, and then FPL was able to remove that pole that should in theory now be free and clear.
And that's why we'd have to synchronize this very closely with them.
And who just
My second
to
question,
make
is a transformer on the pole?
Yes, but well, it could potentially be on the pole. Not all poles have transformers, but there's the transformers. The overhead transformers will remain overhead. They look like a cylindrical gray object that you see on the pole.
Do you have something illustrated that
see.
could show the difference between the new transformers and also, and the old transformers, assuming they're gonna be in the same positions that they currently are, with the same cadence? The second part is, do you have anything illustrated that would show the difference between today's poles, not just height, but also girth?
Sure. The poles are relatively the same size,
In width.
girth-wise. They're about 6 inches bigger at the base. Now, there are going to be instances, it's hard to run through all the design scenarios, but there could be instances where there is a pull-off, meaning a line being pulled off of that feeder that requires a pole that's slightly larger, but we're talking about inches now. If there was an instance where a large pole will be set, that would be design dependent, and we can run that, scenario by the permitting department, the public works department.
I think the
and
more
they're
illustrative
certainly
it
aware
could be,
of
the
it.
better, because we have seen pictures in the past where we've seen hardened poles that are quite large, much larger than we currently have.
It could be.
Not inches,
Yeah,
but
correct.
feet. And so we want to just make
So,
sure we see something
When we're
illustrated.
saying larger, are we talking about height?
I'm
or
talking
are we
about, you
girth?
already mentioned height.
Girth.
I was talking about girth and width.
Okay, so the typical, right? Obviously, there are scenarios. It's difficult to cover all the design scenarios, but there are scenarios where a large pole could be called for. I won't say that's not our typical scenario. We try to avoid those too. They're very cumbersome to come over with cranes, large holes, deep, right? We are not fans of it either. But there are some design restrictions that would sometimes require those poles, but that would be permitted and again, work with the Public Works Department to make sure that they're on board with whatever it's planned.
And to piggyback off Councilmember London's question, can we assume that the cadence or the placement of the transformers would be similar to what we currently have today, or would there be more or less?
I think they'll be similar. Transformers are shown here on the picture on your left, those cylindrical objects. So in a case like this, if there's an existing pole, and it looks like there was something next to it, I can't tell from the angle of the photo. It was an old one, right? So that's what you typically find, that one is placed next to the other. Now, sometimes there's not a foot, sometimes it needs to be a little bit further, sometimes there's a tree in the way, right? So that we need to push it out a little bit further. But we try to typically get them as close as you want, as to the old pole as possible. Now, there are instances where the current span, let's say it's 500 feet, I'm going something very large between poles. That would not pass wind loading. So an intermediate pole, that's what we call it, would be something that would have to be an additional pole that would have to be placed between that large span. Again, that's based on, every pole is calculated, so we have a solid model that we install all the poles, we install all the equipment, every single piece of equipment that's on the pole, and that single pole is analyzed to make sure it meets extreme wind loading, which is
I have-
hurricane force winds.
I have questions a little in the weeds, but if we were to go the hardened pole route, would part of your program include payment for removal of the existing poles? Or are we going to have to pay for that?
No, we would remove the existing, if the poles belong to FPL, now, not all poles belong to Florida Power and Light, some poles do belong to AT&T. In the case of the poles do belong to Florida Power and Light, once the pole is vacated by all the utilities on the pole, you would come back and remove that old pole and restore the facilities as well.
So in order to remove all the poles, we would have to coordinate with all the other service providers, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
Steve,
correct.
likewise, are the other service providers also offering to remove those poles at
That's
their
what I just
cost?
asked.
No, everything else would be at our cost. Anything telecommunications would be our cost.
Question, sir. What would the difference be between a concrete pole and a wooden pole with a transformer on it when bushes, trees, or other things interfere with it and all of a sudden the transformer gets blown out? And that's one of the things we've had over the years many, many times. I know you guys trim the trees, we're not supposed to plant the trees, but being what it is, it's been happening over and over again. So to me, the hardening poles does nothing to eliminate the problems we've had with transformers having been blown out because of interference with trees and bushes and vines, et cetera. I mean, is there anything special between these new transformers versus the old transformers that they won't be affected by the environment the same way the existing transformers are?
So the equipment that will be replaced regarding transformers will be very similar to the equipment now. Of course, it would be something that was, 10, 15, 20, 30 years old. Now we have a brand new piece of equipment. Now, as far as the exposure to vegetation, it would still exist. FPL does trim, but the overhead wires would not necessarily be any less susceptible to vegetation than what currently exists.
So the only win for that is that you have a structure, one pole is structurally more sound than the other pole. So if in the event that you have a high wind situation, the wooden pole may fall more likely than the concrete pole. I mean, outside of that, what's the technical difference?
Not necessarily. So if you design something made out of wood and steel or in concrete, you can make one structure just as strong as the other, barring you follow, your design standards.
But from right now, there seems to be no physical change based on what you're saying from a reliability standpoint. The only way you can make this more reliable is if the poles are taller to get farther away from the vegetation.
Yes and no.
Vegetation is driving the primary issue here when it
Sure.
comes to the reliability.
Yeah, I don't know the stats on it, but it could be. It could very well be. It is not uncommon for sure. Now, even what you just mentioned may not be the going 5 feet taller may not be the item that fixes it because the trees will eventually just follow up, right? So certainly, if vegetation is a major concern, the existing overhead power lines being a little bit taller helps in the shorter run, but eventually, depending on the type of tree, and that's why we're big on the right tree in the right place, so that we plant trees that do not exceed a certain height, so then you don't have to worry about those kind of outages. But yeah, I think in principle, I think what you're trying to ask is correct. It's not, it's a reliability benefit from the fact that if you think about an older car, right, that is 20, 30 years old, and in a brand new vehicle, all the equipment on the brand new vehicle is essentially brand new. You likely get better reliability from a equipment perspective, but not necessarily from a vegetation perspective.
Real basic question, sir. What advantage is there to the residents of Key Biscayne to have a hardened system and a
Sure.
hardened,
So,
especially a hardened
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and an underground with laterals? It seems to me it's probably going to spend a lot of money, not do anything aesthetically, and also not do anything reliability. Why would we want to do that?
So we harden our facilities for extreme wind purposes. So I'm sure you're familiar with all the hurricanes Florida's had. Ian is a good example of that. So in Hurricane Ian, we saw our poles. Now, there's no system, overhead or underground, that's going to prevent outages. Even hardened system will have outages during a hurricane. The difference is when you have to put up poles, it's a major effort. So let's say you have a system where poles do break and go down. Now you have to replace a pole. The time required to do that action is way longer than if the conductor breaks. So let's say something gets on the conductor and the conductor breaks, meaning the wire is down, as an example. To put up that wire, it's a lot faster restoration time than it is for somebody to come over and start putting up 10, 20, 30, or however many poles are down. So your restoration time during a hurricane will be significantly reduced. And we saw that with Ian at Fort Myers Beach. I'm sure you guys seen pictures of Estero Boulevard, houses bouncing off our poles, boats, cars, you name it. Our pole line was still standing there. Some of the wire was down, but the restoration was a lot quicker because of it. Now, unfortunately, there weren't that many facilities in Estero Boulevard that could take power at that point, and that's something that, when you're that close to the water, is something that needs to be considered as well. Which also the underground, not to get into that sandbox because it's not mine, but the underground does pose some concerns with storm surge.
How do you compare the restoration time of the underground versus the hardened wire?
I I don't specifically have the stats, but in general terms, you are looking at, if you depend the type of storm. So let's say you have a windstorm, not much water, not much storm surge. So I would venture to say that an underground system would fare better during a windstorm. Now, if meaning you're better off having an underground system. But if you have a storm that comes with a lot of storm surge and a lot of high waters, right, 10 feet, 15 feet, whatever, bad scenario, then the underground system would be more at risk than
Why?
an overhead system.
Why?
Because your transformers, everything will be underwater. And sand usually comes, as we saw that with Ian as well. A lot of sand comes over and just essentially covers everything, people's houses, cars. Think about snow, right? You can't even see where equipment is anymore. It's just
And
under sand.
is that surge dangerous more because the damage that the water and the sand will create, or is it because you just can't get to the equipment until the water subsides?
It's both. So it's yes, if the water, when it remains, obviously no one is able to work on it. But afterwards, you have the residue of the sand that covers all that equipment.
Your vehicles are restricted by water height, not by, so you're not gonna come out to address an overhead wire if you got water on the road any more than you would come out to address an undergrounding when there's water on the road. So that's,
Well, yes and no, right? So 2 feet of water, a vehicle can manage. 2 feet of water in a transformer, you cannot manage. So yes, there is some of that. And then the other thing to think
But
about,
after you hit 35 miles per hour, you don't come out, right?
well, the guys, they won't be up in the bucket if it's more than 35 miles per hour.
So
Okay,
basically,
but
Yeah.
the storm.
either way, in either
Sir?
situation.
I have a question.
Ed's asking a question.
But the question is this. Previous presentations, and I asked questions about the transformer and the case around the transformer. And I was told then you also had waterproof cases.
Yeah.
Is that still the case?
We have waterproof, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Cases for underground.
Casing,
Around the
Um,
transformer.
Ground-based transformers.
The ground-based switch right there
I
behind.
think this gentleman over here would
Mr.
be more
Switch.
qualified to answer that than I am. Maybe, I don't wanna put you on the spot.
I'm not aware of any waterproof transformer casings that we are installing currently on any of our other projects, but there are certain transformers that will automatically reset as soon as the floodwaters subside, speeding up restoration. Whereas some have to be manually reset, and then there are some that will reset automatically as soon as the water's down.
But that's
But
not what
water
they told
won't
me.
damage them
What they told
irreparably.
me was that
Will it?
there was a difference in charge and it was more expensive, but you could have a waterproof case around the transformer.
They make Nemo boxes.
Whether you're using it or not is another story, but it was available.
I'll have to look into that.
Mayor, if I
Thank
may.
you.
yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to ask a question irrespective of storms on a day-to-day maintenance overall. Consider outages on an underground system versus above ground. How do you, what's the time to identify where where the outage may be? And finding it and repairing it on an underground system versus an above ground system? Because really, I mean, I know, we can talk about any black swan event we want, we can think of a storm, we can think of wind, but I'm talking every day power outages. Can you tell me a little bit about the process? How do you locate it?
Sure. So for the overhead system, it's essentially we would have an idea more or less, depending on how they can isolate the circuit from our headquarters. They'll have an idea of what the fault may be located. We have fault maps that try to help us, guide us to where the fault is.
Right.
And then when there's a fault, it's somebody driving out there, literally looking up at the wire and go, I see the problem, here it is. Guys, boom up, fix it, come down. Of course, I'm oversimplifying what it takes,
it's-
right? But just for the sake of the conversation, the underground is quote unquote invisible. You cannot see it, so you have to try to troubleshoot it, just like you would electrical circuit in your house if you're having a malfunction on your vehicle. Those intermittent things.
Right.
You're chasing something that is not visible to the naked eye most of the time. So it does take a little bit longer, and let's say an underground cable fails, it's usually not, you're not splicing it. You don't find the fault, you dig a hole and you fix it, you literally pull it all out.
Pull and
And you
splice.
pull in brand new cable in. So that operation does typically take longer than the overhead, so.
I think it's an important component for the residents to be aware of, because I think that the whole discussion generally circles around a catastrophic event, whether it is a storm, flood event, or whether it's a wind-driven event. But on a day-to-day operations, I think it's important for the residents to be aware that for the most part, it is more likely to take longer to identify where the issue is.
That's correct.
And I think that's something to take into consideration.
Well, do you have
Real
any
good point,
statistics
Fernando,
on?
but
Ed, go
Hello?
ahead.
it's a good point, Fernando, but the other question you say is this. How often does an underground cable get damaged that it has to be repaired compared to an overhead conductor?
Right.
Since the underground conductor is basically isolated from the web. Why? So if you look back on your history in FTNL, how often do you replace an underground cable versus how often do you replace an overhead conductor? And to the best of my knowledge, that's the whole reason for the reliability of undergrounding, because the underground conductors, they're very rarely out. Your feeder might have a problem, their laterals usually don't have a problem. And yes, it's tougher to isolate, but it's also, the frequency of having a problem is much, much less than an overhead, and that's why everybody is going underground.
We see that right
Well,
now.
can we, that, I think that was, I would like to consider not a statement, but rather a question, right? Could you answer that?
Yeah, so as far as the frequency goes, I
Right.
don't have the specific stats on it. We have a department that looks at those things, but I think in general terms, frequency is lower, outage frequencies is lower in an underground system that is in an overhead system, generally speaking. Now, the age of the system impacts a lot of that, right? So if you have a brand new system, either one, right, overhead or underground, you do have those issues. So I'll use Miami Beach as an example. An older system, an older area that's established, exposed to salt water, something similar to what you would have here. So there is a certain lifespan of that those corrosion, right? To put it simply, that you will get into those, as well as those cables try to be sealed and splices sealed and everything else.
Right.
It does have some lifespan, and intrusion will get in there and corrosion will happen, and they will fail. So an older underground system can have just as frequent outages as an overhead system.
Yeah, because the environment in a high groundwater condition where you have brackish water, you have a mixture of salt water, which is our groundwater, pretty high.
Yeah,
For the most part, those systems are underwater.
that's
Why are
correct.
we comparing old systems for now? I mean, we're talking about replacing either one with another. We're not talking about taking an old system and upgrading
No, no,
it.
no,
We're
no, we
talking
would-
about, so when we're looking at reliability standpoints, Ed is discussing something very straightforward. He's saying, if you have overhead wires or you have underground wires, if they're brand new, the underground wires are more protected, so therefore, and by the way, the wire is your responsibility, so if you have to maintain that wire, you should know how often that wire needs to be changed, if it's underground versus surface wire, because that's your responsibility as the power entity.
But I
We're just
think,
providing the conduit.
but I think what it's being discussed is the level of corrosiveness of the environment, that you're putting that brand new system underwater, you're leaving it underwater, and the potential of it requiring maintenance or potential failure could be, and I want FNL to assert that or not, whether you have the data or not, but being exposed underwater, because it will be underwater, it will be submerged, always be
But that
submerged.
maintenance is their responsibility.
It will be, you'll be 3 feet, the groundwater is 1.5 feet below.
Fernando, we're not arguing it's underwater.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. I'm not sure.
It's in conduit.
All we're
No,
saying
it
is that
doesn't matter, but
they would
that's what-
still have to maintain
They
it.
still
They
have the
know how much they have to
responsibility. I know,
maintain it,
but-
whether it's more or less maintenance.
No, but I think what we're talking about, can I just,
Go for
it's
it.
hilarious. What I'm trying to find out is if you have a system that is below ground, below the groundwater, is it more susceptible to furtherance of the condition of it, of being affected by being underground, by being in a brackish water condition?
Yeah, it does.
It's
Obviously,
exposed.
if you have a location where you have a higher water level, right, the water
Right.
table, and the system is not constantly submerged, you would expect that system. Now we're talking about longevity, right? So
Exactly.
yes, brand new systems will last. But now, longevity is something to be concerned about too. You may be worried about what the residents would experience 5 years from now. You have to think about where your residents will experience 30 years from now, and
Right.
40 and 50 and so on. So that's definitely a concern. I'm not steering you guys one way or another. I'm just telling you these are some of the considerations you need to take into account.
Yep.
Now, obviously, listen, there's no silver bullet. It's what exists. It's either overhead or underground. Has pros and cons like anything else in life. If you get something with the underground, you're gonna get some pros. You got some stuff with the overhead, you're gonna get some cons. And I think what the team is here today, and then the residents and everybody else here is trying to weigh out those options to see what best serves you, but there is no silver bullet.
Would you please confirm that regardless of which system we chose and choose in the end, there will be redundancy? As we have now with overhead, we have redundancy. That was the problem we had. Both sources, I guess, failed.
Both feeders.
Feeders, right.
Yes.
So would we have the redundancy with underground?
Yes, yes, and I'm speaking for John here, but I think they would do something very similar with the underground, but since I do overhead, John just confirmed that, yes, the redundancy would be maintained.
I mean, the recent history on Key Biscayne for the last couple of years where we've really had some significant power outages, those have all been surface wires. It's just, we just recently, just a couple of weeks, about a month and a half ago or 2 months
July
ago.
24th.
July 24th, we had the major underground wires go bad. Now, that's the first time we've had an undergrounding issue that anybody can really remember. So,
And
so-
admittedly, it was an old.
it was an old
It's a
wire.
very
right?
old
So-
wire, yeah.
Right, so the question for me is, your maintenance responsibilities, where do they lie? I mean, when it comes to knowing when your wire needs to be changed. I mean, there's normally routine requirements to change wire at specific times, or do you just wait for it to break?
I'm in the overhead department.
Right.
I can't answer for the operation and maintenance guys, but there is a expected life expectancy for some of these products.
Right.
Now, I don't know how they run their maintenance program. I'll probably have to get somebody from operations to answer that a little bit better. I don't want to give you an answer that's incorrect.
I have one more question. And the question is this. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The question is, I think Cape Florida, which consists of about 3 streets, has undergrounding for about the last, I guess, 60 years, 55 years. And what kind of problems have they had with the undergrounding in the last 55 or 60 years? You have any idea, Steve? Any complaints?
That's a good question. In comparison, how has that performed versus our overhead power lines?
I
I'm
don't
not
think
even
we have that
familiar
kind
with
of
it.
data isolated into a single location.
I can give personal.
But so a lot of this is all good conversation. So the presentation kind of goes forward to continue this conversation. So let me just kind of run through if we could.
I think it'd be really important to get to those pictures because that
Yeah.
will help educate everyone.
So,
as to-
yeah, so a lot of what we just talked about, I think you saw it as we popped up. Over on the left is a brand new, spanking new on Riviera. That's it. So those are hardened
Power went out.
feeders you see on the left right there. And the pad mounted transformer, that's for a lateral, am I correct? FPL guys? Yes. And then down here, a Vista switch is the equivalent of a transformer or a vault system for your undergrounded feeder line. So left feeder hardened, bottom right feeder undergrounded.
Okay, so Steve,
Steve,
from a
I got a
practical
question for
standpoint,
you.
the larger
you-
box is for the feeder lines, which will be running down the lines that we saw in red up on the chart. Those would be, those boxes, and they will be spaced how far away? Roughly.
For comparison, just for Zone 1, we're gonna have 5 Vista switches, the big boxes. There are 5
Okay, so
that
for,
FPLs are proposed.
so for 250 homes approximately, we're gonna have 5 of those boxes.
Right, so
Okay, so they're not, that's not a significant amount of those boxes.
For those lines right there, as you would
Right,
see.
and so for the other, Steve, just roll the slide back for the,
Same question.
yeah, so the small boxes, which are the lateral boxes, from what I recall, we said between 5 and 7 homes.
even less than that.
Every two.
How many of them?
I mean, yeah, depending on the
That's every
size and the
2
properties, but like around 4.
So, I mean, roughly, guys.
One every 3 to 4 homes.
Okay, so so for every 3 to 4 homes, there'll be one of these small boxes placed in the right of way.
Right, but the bigger the house and the more consumption the house, the
They'll
less
be-
capacity, so yeah.
So just to get an idea of
Steve?
if we want underground telecommunications, we're gonna see this, we already have it in some places, but obviously, because these are all actually on Key Biscayne. But this would, what we see throughout the entire village.
Steve,
Yes,
you're for hardening. Could you tell us why you think hardening is the way to go or better than undergrounding?
I'm facilitating a conversation, council member.
No, but I mean, your experience, and basically we've talked before, and obviously you think hardening has advantages. So what are the advantages you believe, except for the cost, of hardening over underground? That's what I'm asking.
We'll get to that when we have an evaluation table, comparison table coming up that'll show you the, not my opinion, but our team's opinion and FPL's input onto it as well.
Okay.
So this would be what you would see with telecommunications. Next up, this is, and FPL, one of the guys want to jump in, but this is very clearly, you can see these are for laterals in the back of a home on the one on the left. If we chose to underground the laterals, which I think we're going to choose to anyway, you would see what's on the right. What's remaining, as I mentioned before, it is not FPL's responsibility to take down any telecommunications. That would be ours, and I hope when I click it's going to go away. And it goes away, so look at that. AI is great, isn't it? But, so that would be our responsibility, is to take down the telecommunications line. There will be a time lag. It doesn't happen overnight, and so we would have to make sure we'd synchronize it as best as possible. So I think this next slide is, and we've talked a lot about this already, is really just getting a good understanding amongst the council. What do we believe, what do you believe to be the most important criteria that we want to consider as we begin to make this decision? And actually, I think, and Rod, you brought one up, you brought one up called longevity. We don't have it on here, but that's actually a pretty interesting one. How long would your system last based on the environment that it's in? We don't have it up there. If you want to consider it, you can, but this is a great opportunity to have a conversation between, what of these 6 criteria do we think are the drivers of the decision we want to make?
Steve, I don't understand the question of longevity. If you're replacing brand new material, FPL has a responsibility to provide high quality wire, whether it's below ground or above ground. So if they're having system errors, they have to address that. It's not our responsibility to address the wire.
Yeah,
So-
but
and
it's
the
a useful
switch
life,
gears-
it's a useful life issue.
Yeah, but it's
It's
not.
not, I'm sure they're not gonna fix the lines in perpetuity,
Sure they are. That's their responsibility.
forever.
Well,
they do.
look, I didn't put it up there for a reason, but we did put up as maintenance and repair, right? So that's something that, in one way, maintenance and repair is your ability to maintain your longevity. And so, that's the way we address it. I just brought it up because you stated it. You guys can take it on if you want, or not. It's not something that I'm saying we need to talk about.
No, what I'm driving at is that you're making an inference that one is gonna last longer than the other.
No, I'm just repeating what
But
the
that's.
gentleman from FBL said.
but-
And I said, if you'd like to consider it, you may.
No, but what I'm driving at is if they're providing the wire underground, or they're providing the wire above ground, they're responsible for the wire. And they're responsible for the quality of wire, because that's what that's what we're paying for. We're just providing the conduit, they provide the switch gears, they provide the transformers, they provide all that gear. We don't provide that, they do. So all we're really discussing is whether we're putting poles up or conduit underground. Because at the end of the day, FPL is responsible for the wire and all the maintenance associated with the wire.
I'm very clear of that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Okay. So this is really a discussion of those two things. What's going to last longer, a Cat 4 storm versus a Cat 1 storm?
I really like this evaluation criteria. I think it's very objective, and I think I think if we take that through the whole concept of undergrounding anything, in other undergrounding discussions that we've had, very few times we actually touched on these points except on cost. So on other undergrounding systems that we talked about, we never discussed reliability, we never discussed aesthetics, we barely discussed maintenance and repair, post-storm restoration. And I'm just trying to understand a comparison here, because obviously this is a decision this council needs to make. Let's stick with cost. then, because really it's always been the issue with undergrounding systems. So what's the ROI on this? If we maintain with the concept that the public has, the people have expressed concerns about cost, right? What is the ROI of undergrounding a system, versus also undergrounding the stormwater? We don't discuss the ROI, but we do discuss cost. So explain to us what the ROI is on this.
I mean, I think ROI would be hard for us to calculate. Really, cost is what we will put into it. As Councilmember Bracken mentioned before, it's FBL's responsibility to maintain it. Obviously, we would have to build it to their standard. So in some ways, it would be a subjective ROI, which would be quality of life or continuation of service, hard to
Right.
quantify.
But it would be more, in my opinion.
So really, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, I'm sorry.
No, so really, it's what we're evaluating here, what this criteria is evaluating, what is it gonna cost us for the implementation?
What are we getting out of it except aesthetics? Because really, when we're talking about it, at the end of the day, we're kind of drawing the same comparison. Above ground and below ground, we don't really have any hard driven criteria, but we are talking a lot about aesthetics, about keeping this thing below ground. So what aside from aesthetics are we really benefiting from this? Because we're paying a big penny on this one.
I think the slide that the manager's trying to get to will give us that.
Well, we do have costs, and we do have criteria that we go through. But we don't have to have a conversation on this, but it would be helpful if we could really understand which of these do we think are most important, or maybe it's better as we look at these in practicality and comparing each other, and they come out a little bit better. So, what we're gonna do is go ahead and jump, and Chris, I'd like you to go through this one.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
If the service provider is responsible for the wire, we're responsible for the conduit. So the question then becomes, what's the reliability of the conduit? And that's what's underwater. That's the only thing that's protecting the wire. So if the conduit is broken, they may have to fix the wire, but if the conduit is broken, that's on us, right?
I guess it determines how we go into that agreement on that one. That would
So,
be.
I can see how you would think that if a cable is inside a conduit, that you won't be seeing any water. That's not necessarily the case. Okay, the conduit ends at one point called a manhole. If their manhole fills up with water, the water will find its way inside the conduit around the cable. So yes, the conduit sort of protects, but the main purpose of the conduit is just to help pull the cable in, pull the cable out. Its job is not necessarily to protect the wire from the elements. Yeah.
Good question.
The cable. Yeah.
Can I answer Fernando's question or suggestion?
Yeah.
Fernando asked about ROI. And of course, it's very difficult to determine that as far as the financial ROI, not psychic income, in the fact that people think houses look better, but I think that houses look better means they sell for more. The question is, how much more would a house sell for, or a neighborhood become more desirable if they had underground electric rather than ugly wooden poles and transformers in the backyards? And I don't have the answer. It's very difficult to tell because the Cape Florida area is different from the rest of the thing because they're all waterfront houses. So it
But
would
that
make it
goes
very
back to
difficult.
aesthetics. It doesn't go back to savings for the residents.
Aesthetics is money. Aesthetics is money because you pay more when something looks better. Most people do.
Sure.
So that's what usually happens. So you have psychic income, which is very difficult to put a number on, and that is when you look out and aesthetics, it's not there. You have reliability income when you're not gonna, how much is it worth to you not to have an outage? Now, again, versus more outages. So the question again, how do you put a number on that? So to do an ROI and an engineering or a financial analysis is almost impossible. But you can assume, and most people would in the real estate business, that homes would have underground power would sell for more money than a similar home in a similar location with overhead power.
Would you say
put a
that
number-
that equates to, would you say that that equates to flood insurance? I mean, a savings for a home. I mean, I can understand the aesthetic component and I'm all for it. But, you know, in comparison to other undergrounding systems, we have measurable savings for the residents, which is flood insurance, and also FEMA protection, and also Moody's ratings for our municipality. So, I mean, listen, I'm all for it, but we don't have a lot in the piggy bank, so we're talking about spending money, and undergrounding is expensive any which way you look at it. So if you're telling me what's gonna be valuable to the homeowners, I think, in my opinion, I'd rather look at flood insurance, I'd rather look at FEMA, I'd rather look at Moody's ratings for our credit ratings in our municipalities. I don't think undergrounding utilities does anything for that. Unless somebody has a better answer.
You certainly have an opinion.
I'm just saying, I mean, it's not an opinion, it's a fact.
Well, for your information, the FEMA ratings are going up 18% a year till they get to market. So at this point in time, if you want to elevate the properties, you'll have less flood insurance, lower rates. But if you don't, you'll have higher rates. I don't think it's really a rocket science.
All right, let's keep going.
All right, so what we have next, and we'll go ahead and flip to the next one, is, and what I want to do as we get here, there's a lot of information on here. We're comparing 3 options with 6 different criteria, which means there are 18 different things. I'm going to ask Chris to go do an overview of this, but then what we do, as you can see next, is we actually do a one-by-one comparison so that you can really narrow in on the ones that we want. So, Chris, if you would give us a big overview on this, please.
Certainly. Many of these you guys have already discussed, and it's the comparison of the underground versus the hybrid model versus the SSP program that FPL has. They're side-by-side comparisons, reliability amongst the 3, undergrounding, you have no wires exposed to the elements, so everything's underground. Cost, the village is paying for the undergrounding fully, although materials are given to us by FPL, we're still paying for them. The aesthetics, everything's undergrounded, so you don't see anything, obviously. Maintenance and repairs, with undergrounding, we found that sometimes it's challenging as far as maintenance to get in there. If the manholes fill with water, as was discussed, it may be more difficult for them to get in and make repairs. Post-storm restoration, the only difference between the maintenance and the post-storm restoration is the time for them to come back out and restore undergrounding. Take longer to find those breaks or any deficiencies in the lines. And then the construction complexity, we're leading it, and with undergrounding, we're leading it. So we're pushing it. It's on our time frame. It's not on anybody else's. With the hybrid model, the feeders remain exposed, vegetation possibly, or winds or whatnot. For the laterals, which we would look at undergrounding, and in that case, cost comes in. We're paying for the lateral undergrounding. FPL pays for the feeders. The aesthetics, the feeders are still going to be exposed. You're still going to see them. Hopefully, working with FPL, we would maintain either where they're at or find a suitable location within a certain distance of where they're currently at. But the laterals, in the hybrid model, the laterals would be undergrounded, so you wouldn't see those. The maintenance and repairs, easier to repair on a feeder. FPL can come out and repair those quickly. Undergrounding, the laterals, we might still have some issues with the laterals, difficulty in getting to them. Construction, we would be at let's say the mercy of FPL for the feeders to be overhead and those to be hardened, and then we would still be working on our side to get the laterals undergrounded. And then the SSP program is fully on FPL and how they would manage that program. The feeders would remain exposed, similar to the hybrid model. The cost FPL pays for the entire program, SSP is covered. And then the aesthetics, it's similar to the hybrid model with the feeders being overheaded and then the laterals being undergrounded. They would do that.
Let me ask a question on
Yes.
the SSP, SPP,
SPP.
because I hear this all the time. So there is no, there's no cost involved, but you do that at your own timeline. Is that timeline 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Is there a set number?
We do not have a set number. That would be FPL's.
No, I'm asking FPL.
Okay.
What's the time frame differential?
So I don't think we have anybody from the SSP.
Yes.
So the program's called SSUP, Storm Secure Underground Program. Right now, it's governed by the Florida Public Safety Commission, and there's a list that we go to the PSC every year, and it's our lowest performing feeders, and basically it's a laterals. So and it's a request. Like I say, we want to do these, and they're graded on a variety of criteria, and the PSC signs off on that list. There's really no ability to get on the list. It just, if the feeder performs low enough, then the laterals will be undergrounded. So it's not so much an option as it is like waiting to see if the feeder comes on the list.
But assuming you're in it,
As of right now, Village of Key Biscayne is not on the list.
right? But assuming you're in it, just for argument's sake, you're gonna do where the feeder performs worst. It's not citywide.
Yes, it's not citywide. It's broken up into the individual feeders
Right,
that
so-
serve the community.
So those, a lot of people going out there and saying that it's free. Well, yeah, it's free for the areas only that you have a problem feeders. Is that correct?
Yes, and well, all FPL ratepayers are paying a very small percentage on every bill towards these programs.
Okay.
And if I may clarify something, I
No.
know that the terms were.
Hold on a
were-
second.
The terms were used interchangeably, so when he mentioned feeders a couple of times, we're talking about laterals. So the SSUP program, which is a program that falls under the umbrella of the SPP, right? The Storm Protection Plan. Part of that plan is undergrounding the laterals, so it's an arm of that
Okay,
program.
so it's only about laterals.
Correct. So it's SSUP is referring to undergrounding overhead laterals, which again are the small arteries that we talked about that serve the extremities, meaning what you typically see behind your house, right? If you have a rear of
Right,
overhead
you
line,
go to that.
like the one you
Yeah.
showed in the
Yeah,
slide.
which
Correct.
is a great slide, yeah.
Yes.
Rod, would that also though include hardening of feeders as well?
The storm protection plan includes the hardening of feeders. So there, if you think about two main arms of that program, the storm protection plan, the SPP.
Feeders and laterals.
So it's a two-prong approach, which is you're gonna go and you harden your feeders, and then the other side of it is you go and you underground the laterals, which is what you typically find in the rear of
But
properties.
what the PSC approves is because you have a lot of power failures in those laterals.
Correct. Yeah, and those laterals meets a criteria which I'm not really in depth. I
But
don't have
you're-
in-depth knowledge of it, but
But in
it's-
terms of the public, what you see the most is that you're able to put back more people on feeders. So the fact that you take care of laterals is nice, but it's really the feeders that have the biggest impact.
Correct. Yeah, it's definitely a cascading effect, right? So it's almost like a sequence or order of events of when things happen. So if something happened and took the lateral out first, meaning the fuse blew, when the feeder comes back on, the fuse is open now. So whatever blew before that, those laterals would not come back up when the feeder comes back up. But the feeder is the main bloodline to that power source to those homes. So those typically return to power first, and whatever stayed connected, meaning if fuse didn't blow, those will come back.
So
working.
again, just to make sure that we're all clear, the SPP program does both feeders and laterals,
That is correct.
but it only does it based on the biggest need, and you do that system-wide.
For the laterals.
For the
For the
laterals.
They're
laterals,
only
yes.
undergrounding the laterals.
Yeah.
Period.
Joe?
Correct.
Based on some.
Joe?
Yeah, and hardening the
Correct.
feeder, right?
Joe?
So would we ever qualify under biggest need because we're a small community?
I don't think that that's one of the criteria they use with the PSC.
But I thought, when I met with the FPL rep a month or so ago, he had said to me something about being on the list, and where you are on the list has to do with the number of residents that are actually impacted by a problem.
I think it's what number, so residents, I can't speak for him or what he told you, but I think what he may be talking about may be the number of customers served by that lateral. So let's say you have a lateral that serves 200 customers versus one that feeds a pump and Okeechobee, right, on that serves one customer. So I think the number of customers on that particular lateral may impact where it falls on the list, but I think you would probably need an expert to do it. But I think that might be
That
what
was
you're
what he was
referring to.
talking about, but I
Yeah,
still think that means we just don't have.
Oh, but we have 15,000 people in 1 square mile, so we do have
density.
quite a draw of electricity. So I think we would rate
No.
high. I think, thank goodness, keep our fingers crossed. We haven't faced a lot of wind damage in Key Biscayne recently, so I think that probably is one of the reasons that we probably have
Yeah, an everyday
higher
reliability.
reliability than other communities do.
Can I interject something?
Sure, go
About
ahead.
6 or 8 years ago, FP&L came up with a program that the FEPSC agreed to so they could go ahead and capitalize on this improvements on undergrounding and hardening. And they have a 3-year plan, and this is on the third 3-year plan. We weren't on the first 3 years, we weren't on the second 3 years, and I don't think we're in the third 3 years. It is an irrational plan. 60% of the determination, whether you're on that plan, is 2 hurricanes out of, Steve, you remember the 2 names of them, which did not affect Key Biscayne at all. So as a result, because we were very lucky in 2 hurricanes, the undergrounding, the feeders and all the other stuff going out is less than 40% of how you're on that plan. Steve went with me to the PSC. We discussed it with them. They agreed the FPNL criteria does not what we call current probabilistic determination of who should get what, but they were using that system, and basically the FPNL runs the PSC, and unless the FPNL wants to change it, we're not on the 3-year plan. So, and that is what it is, nothing else to do with practical stuff. This has a formulation they did some 7, 8 years ago.
I can't speak to that. What I do know, there was a pilot program that the PSC put together with FPL when we started to do the lateral hardening program, and they wanted to see if it worked. And I know they had a trial period of a select number to see if people were even interested in doing this. Because believe it or not, one of the bigger challenges this program had in the very beginning is that people thought it was too good to be true. They thought it was a scam, right? It's like, you mean you go in my backyard, you're gonna put my power line, you're probably going through that, and they don't charge you anything, and it's free. So that was kind of the challenge. So they went through this pilot, which was limited to certain areas, and they tried to spread it around the state. Now the criteria, I don't know who sets the criteria. I would imagine that they work together with the PSC, whoever worked with them, and try to come up with something that was pleasing to both parties, I would imagine, and of course PSC represents the residents, the consumers. So that's that. I think that's what I can add to that. The rest I'm not well informed enough to be able to comment on.
So thanks, Rod. I appreciate that. And for those who don't know the PSC, it's the Public Service Commission, and that's a elected body at the state level who is our representative of the people and works very closely with FPL to set these standards. So what I think is next, after Chris gave this very good overview, is really just to drive into each comparison. The first one we want to compare is underground all to hybrid. And what we try to do is very simplify it here to where we just pluses and minuses. This is our first take. This is where we can have a conversation while we talked about the criteria. Now it's an opportunity to say, is this the right rating? Do we believe there's something else? Which one do we feel is the direction we'd like to go. So, Chris, you want to walk through, or does this speak to itself? Does everyone kind of get what this says? Hopefully, it stands on its own.
To me, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yes.
Chris, I'm confused why you say maintenance and repair is negative. I mean, it's, that's either yes or no. And
Well,
that's not really a way to do this. You have to have data. And unfortunately, the FPL guys came today with very limited amount of data, so we don't know what the real true reliability conversations are, because we have nothing to compare it to. It's very subjective.
So, look, council members, so what we're trying to do tonight is ask you for some initial guidance. We don't have that data yet, and we hope that we can walk out of here with some indication of what the council would like us to go. At that point, we will then do a detailed analysis.
So
Without knowing the direction that the council wants to go, we cannot evaluate every possible criteria. So what we want to do is, when we come out of here, is be able to do exactly what you're asking for. But we just don't have the time to do that. So let's focus on the bigger picture if we could, and then when it's time to go deeper, please give us some guidance and we'll go that direction.
Well, I might suggest that maybe the guidance that Councilmember Brecken, I don't want to speak for you, Michael, is that particular criteria right there doesn't have a lot of value in his mind, and I tend to agree without that data. Because, look, even one of the concerns I even have with regards to some of the undergrounding is we obviously learned from this last outage that some of those underground lines are quite more decayed than FP&L themselves even thought they were.
Correct, yeah.
And that's a problem, for me anyway, because they should know how bad they are. And my understanding through that whole exercise was they went in, they expected something, they thought they could fix it, they went in and realized it's a lot worse than we thought. And so that is a bit concerning. And so
Very concerning.
when we talk about maintenance and repair, they're responsible to maintain and repair everything anyway. So it's almost equal. And if you suggest maintenance repair on overhead is easier, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that this makes sense without the data. So I think there is some guidance.
I would
I hear
agree.
guidance.
I would agree with that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So it's
But I wanted to ask one question with that premise.
Yeah.
Because data is important, but it has to be based on the context that we're evaluating it. Number one, do you have that data to support it? And do you have a data like that for coastal communities?
Well, before, just so
Oh,
I
yeah,
can
no,
finish.
go ahead. I'm sorry, I
Also
thought
on
you
the
were
second
done.
one, on post-storm restoration, same thing. So if it's high winds, to the gentleman's point, if it's high winds, no surge, then actually the post-storm restoration would be worse on a hybrid model. And here it's suggesting that it's actually better. But if it's surge, without the data, we don't know. So already we've potentially flipped 2 negatives to 2 positives, which changes the entire Kubrick. So
Exactly. That's
so it
why,
sounds
that's
like,
why we're
yeah,
having this
so it
conversation.
sounds like guidance
Right.
right now is this doesn't mean much without the data.
Well, it does mean some, and it
Like
also
the
it
first
forces us
two,
to have a
no
conversation.
problem. Same cost. I get it.
yeah.
Those two, but
Right.
then the rest and the aesthetic. But everything below that is, I don't know. I don't know what value it really has without the data. That's all.
I agree, yeah, and that's,
But just want to quickly expand, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Councilwoman, I thought you were done. I just wanted to understand, if we're going to get data, A, do you have it? Do you have the hard data to show us? And do you have the hard data to show us in the context of a coastal community?
So we would have to reach out. We have a department, it's called the Reliability Department. They gather all this data. We can certainly reach out to them. I mean, that's something that I think my colleagues here can reach out to the department and try to obtain that data. If it exists and is tracked, it's I don't know how easy it is for them to parse through that. Of course, you know, I'm going to use a quick example. So if you have something that is, you don't know what you're going to get, right? In terms of a storm, you just don't. You can prepare for one thing or another. Same thing goes for your own personal preparedness. So, meaning, are you more likely to get a windstorm or a storm surge or both? That you can't tell. It has pros and cons, like I mentioned, and I'm sure it's not going to be an easy conversation for you guys to have. You certainly have to weigh your options on both. I want to reiterate again, you're not going to find the silver bullet, right? It's always a compromise like with anything else. Something's going to have to give a little bit, something else is going to take over. What's the most important to you? And I think that's what the criteria is trying to do for you to decide. Obviously, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. Maybe not all 6 are worth the same, right? The weight of one may be more than the others. I'll use an example, the cost. Perhaps the cost weighs more than the aesthetics, or perhaps the aesthetics weighs more than the cost.
But, sir, I don't disagree with you, but if you go to the new build communities that are being built throughout the state of Florida, okay, and they're upscale communities, Weston, for example, which is not new. Weston's underground, okay, and they did that for a reason, because it's, one, it looks better, and it's probably most likely more reliable.
Yes.
So all the new communities, and the condominium communities, they're all undergrounded for a reason. One, no one wants to look at the poles. I mean, the Ocean Club's underground for a reason. That's because no one wants to look at those poles, and it's probably more reliable because they're not having power problems there unless the feeders are going down. So historically, we've seen this on the island, that the reliability is actually better.
Usually been better in the condos than
on
in
the
the
condo
house.
side, because it's all underground at the Ocean Club. So there's multiple examples, but I mean, the principal reason you guys are here is to educate us, but also you have a fundamental problem with your main feeder lines coming into the key. And that's one of the reasons why this whole conversation has been fast-tracked, because there is a problem. And there's a reliability problem on the island with the power. And I appreciate, and it is, you guys are a for-profit company. I mean, so you're not gonna do anything that's not gonna make you money, I understand that. But we're trying to make a business decision whether we use something that we think is more reliable versus something that is not reliable. And that's where we are, and it's challenging without any data, okay? And we appreciate that there's no silver bullet.
Yeah.
We can go back and look at our reliability department and provide data. To your point, I would not be surprised that you would get better reliability data from the underground as far as the frequency of the outages go. There's likely a scenario you're going to see that come back. I'm not denying that at all. I just don't know what percentage, right? I'm an engineer and I like to talk in percentages. I don't like to open my mouth if I don't know what the percentages are. If I say something here, then you're gonna tell me, you told me it was 50% better, right? I was like, well, I don't know.
I couldn't agree more.
So I don't have that data, and that's why I'm not bringing it. If my intuitive bias would be to agree that you will find that the underground does provide you a frequency. It is also true that when it does fail, like we had that conversation, it will be a longer outage. Perhaps that's what you meant with the maintenance, plus or minus. From what I was reading on the definition here, so yeah, I think that there are things that will have to be considered. We can certainly provide some information there.
Even in that,
At
what
least
you
look for
said
it.
is, the outage is longer if it's a damaged wire versus a down pole. So how does that compare then with the outage of restoration for underground? So if that pole goes down, it may be very similar, but if it's a line, certainly a line's much faster.
It could be.
Oscar, Key Colony was here during Hurricane Andrew. Key Colony was here during Hurricane Andrew. The village, and where do we have the problems with power? We had the problems with the power in the single family communities. They didn't have the problem in Key Colony. They were back online. Now granted, they have generators for the primary buildings, but when the power came back, they were fine. And that's an old project. That's 40 years old.
Correct.
I got
And
one more question.
likely talking about just level set unhardened poles, meaning poles that were not built for extreme wind loading, not to the standards we have today. I'm sure just like homes, right, back in Andrew are not going to withstand the kind of winds they can withstand today. So kind of take that into your consideration as well.
And interestingly enough, we have hyper localized data. We have both options here on the key today. We have undergrounding versus above ground. We probably can look at that.
I'm sure that's something we can go back to a reliability team and say, hey, is there a way you can pull this data and provide some information on it?
I was told before that FPNL will give us a 25% credit if we underground, because they save a lot of money on maintenance by undergrounding, because it's cheaper for them to maintain and have less outages. Is that still the case?
Yes. That's calculated into our underground costs.
So they basically, they agree, or they believe that there's less outages, cheaper to maintain undergrounding than overhead, correct? Correct?
Well, there are different things to maintain. Obviously, for example, vegetation management is something that pretty much not disappears, but is significantly reduced. So yes, there is that benefit in that, and I think that that's why that credit is in the tariff. Not my sandbox, and I'm sure if John wants to comment on that, but I think in general terms that that's probably a good way to go think about it.
But that would imply that undergrounding is more reliable than overhead.
And that's what I mentioned. I think if we
Requires
pull
less-
the data, you
It
likely
requires less maintenance because
find-
you're not having to shoot the trees.
yeah, you find, you're likely to find, I don't have the data, but you're likely to find that the frequency of, there are two things during an outage. There's frequency and there's duration, right? How
Right.
frequently you go out and how long you're out for. And I think that that's where the trade-off between the two really happens, to be honest. I think you give up on the frequency on one side, but when it does happen, you're gonna pay the price on the duration side. Like I said, there is no silver bullet. You're likely gonna have to weigh what the pros and cons are for your needs and what you think is right.
May
I'm
I,
not here to tell you one way or the other.
quick question. The outages, for the most part, what do they, where do they originate? Is it as a result of the transmission mains within Key Biscayne? Is it as a result of the substation? For the most part, what is the source of the outage?
Within the village of Key Biscayne?
Yeah, when power goes out in Key Biscayne, where does it start?
What, you mean the source or what the source of the outage is or the
Yes.
source of the power?
Yes.
The source of the outage.
The source
What
of the
equipment
outage for the
fails
most part,
most?
is it an overload in the substation?
Are you talking
Is
about the
it-
cause?
The
No,
cause?
The cost, yeah.
Yes.
Like, what
The
is the
cause-
origin,
The last time that these,
For the
that
most
FPL
part, we
briefed
have
us,
data
which was
on
about,
that, don't
2
we?
years ago, all I can recall, I don't remember the other factors, but vegetation was 38%.
vegetation was I think that's a good data to have, if
But
I may.
there was
But it-
other factors, that's the only one I can remember, because that's when I told Chris to go
Right.
start
But
cutting trees.
What I would and you said it's like kind of like a pizza, right? 38% is a result of trees or
Right.
whatever may be,
Then there's
that
equipment
hits a
failure
transmission.
and so forth.
But,
Those
yeah.
numbers I don't recall.
I think that is something that is vital for us to know, because I don't know where they really originate. I don't know if it's a result of maybe the substation not handling load enough, wind tops over a transmission main, power goes out in this section. It's many different places, but I think that once we identify what that is, once we identify where the traffic jam is at, what's going on, where the neck in the bottle is, let's address that. Because that's really what we're here for. We're here to understand where the power outages are coming from. And if it's as a result of, say, 38%, a result of trees, then let's understand how we can resolve that problem. If it's as a result of the substation, let's see if we can resolve that
I
problem.
think probably the one thing we can all agree on is that undergrounding the laterals is a really good thing to do.
Yeah. But I was asking more from the standpoint, okay, when power goes out, where did it start? Was it the substation? You guys have that.
Yeah, I imagine that data would be easier to get, the
Yeah.
cause of
I
the
do have
outage.
that information,
Yeah,
yes.
That's
that would
something
be-
fundamental for this discussion, I
That's
think,
something
because
we
we're
could
talking.
get.
Okay, let's keep going here. I wanna, bring in the people that are here with us that may have questions so that you can, ask the questions while we have all the right people here in the. Luch.
Do I have to say the $3 for 640 hours?
You just did?
Okay, so, we've been talking undergrounding here for, thank you. We've been talking undergrounding at the village, I've been here for 50 years, more or less, in the village of Key Biscayne. We've been talking undergrounding for at least 20 years. Certainly from the time that I was on council, which is 2014 to 2018. At that time, right after my time there was a or maybe during my time, I don't remember when it started, but we had an undergrounding board that was set up, and as a matter of fact, Mr. Vasquez was on it. And at that time, they all unanimously agreed that undergrounding was what we wanted to do. That's before he changed his code, but now it's a different thing, because now we're trying to go back on something that we had already decided in the Village of Key Biscayne that we were going to do. Why are we going back again? Okay, and we had decided to do it all underground. Now, if you look at this, this is the perfect thing to look at. The diagram that has what's undergrounded in Key Biscayne today and what's not undergrounded in Key Biscayne today. Most of Key Biscayne is underground. I mean, the majority of Key Biscayne is underground. And how often do you hear about problems in the areas where there is underground power? I've been here 50 years. I don't remember when the undergrounding actually happened, but I never hear that the buildings are, just this year was the first time that there was a problem on one of those main lines. And I think it's because it was too old. And I think that's a maintenance issue that I think that FPL should be on top of, and they should be changing the lines every so often, whatever time it takes. But if you look here, every single one, the Grand Bay, the Ocean Club, the Key Colony, the towers, all of the condominiums, except for the garden area, are underground, and none of them ever complain. It's always the single-family homes that are out of power. And we've been out of power, I would say, once a month at least this past year. And a couple of times it was out of power for more than a day. So and that's without a storm. Imagine if we would have had a storm. So it's time to stop talking about it. We already discussed this. We already had a board put together. They unanimously agreed that we would do all of the undergrounding. I just don't see why we keep talking about it and not just go forward with it. Now, as far as the feeder lines, I just don't understand why we would leave these huge poles on some streets, in some areas, when every single development that happens today, anywhere in the state of Florida, the power is underground. None of it is above ground. Why would we do it different? And I don't know why our manager and Fernando have got together and they decided.
Okay. No.
Well,
don't go there. Don't go
I
there.
just don't
This
know.
this is a conversation. Okay,
but-
it's a conversation.
Okay, all right,
It's
fine.
not an accusation of anybody.
All right, I just don't, I just like to know why we go back on things that we have already agreed upon years.
Because this is the council that has to make the decision. Period.
My understanding is very simple. It's a new council. I am being informed. I believe at some point previous to us, someone thought it was the best idea. And then I heard my residents ask the question, which one really is the better one? And so we've just asked FPL to come in and explain that to us.
Understood.
Can I answer
But the
that?
idea that we're going back, I don't think anybody's intention is to go
Can-
back on
Well,
anything. Not mine anyway.
I understand that, but when our manager has that idea of changing it. No, wait a second. I'm sitting here in the audience. I can say what I need to say.
What I'm saying
When
is
our
that-
manager decides that he doesn't want to go forward with all.
If you're gonna
underground-
impugn on anybody's character, then no,
It's
you're
not-
not gonna say it.
I'm not impugning
okay?
a character. That's his decision that he
It's
doesn't
not
want
his
to go
decision.
underground.
It's our decision. Period.
All right.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak to any of these?
Mr. Mayor, can I just
No, hold on. Let me get the public involved here, so that they can. You're next. No, you're next.
No, you are.
You wanted to go, ma'am?
I just have a comment, yes. So the first thing I would like to say is that I'm frustrated with FPL that we don't have any data, because at this day and age of AI, it's unacceptable not to have any data. And every single data that we asked, it wasn't provided. So I think this is a very good exercise to think about these points, but it's not valid as we've all agreed now, because there is absolutely no data there. And from what I've been hearing, I'm new in this community, anecdotal data is that underground seems to be better. I don't know, but that's what I'm hearing. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Um, do I have to say the name and the address?
She's not here.
Servando Parapar? Go ahead. Okay.
We all know.
Make sure that when you do the underground, you also have the telecommunications on board.
100%.
Because leaving half a pole
Yeah.
on my backyard
Right.
with the Comcast and AT&T does nothing for this community.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think the
Exactly.
manager talked about coordination and the importance of it.
Yeah. Yes, we'll get to you.
Please explain this. When you are going to do the undergrounding, is this done on the swale or this is done on the street? That's one.
Okay.
Where would the cables go? How deep
Okay.
do you have to dig or for the cables? And what is going to happen to the swale trees?
Okay.
Thank you.
Chris, you want to take that one?
All streets have, all right-of-way, from property line to property line, has a designated location for all utilities. Sewers generally are right down the middle of the streets, drainage typically is on one side, and utilities are on the opposite side. Water is on one side, again, utilities, FPL is on the other side. In a community that's already built out, we have to go in and see where those utilities are at and how FPL would, if we're undergrounding, would come in, and obviously we don't want FPL next to a water line, so they would have to go on the other side. So we would be looking at that. That would be the engineering side of it. Obviously, the survey as-bills for where everything's at. As far as how the construction would be done, it would probably, and this is most likely the way that it's typically done, it's done through a directional boring with a machine that brings it underground. Now, the machines nowadays are very accurate. They can tell where they're going, coming up to a tree, and they can redirect and come underneath the roots of the tree and come up the other side. So they have the ability to go around or underneath or kind of move around where they need to. Now, I'm not talking about moving 5 feet, 6 feet. I'm talking about moving inches around those things. But that's how they would typically do it. There will be some, what they call open digging, where they would put their hand holes. We have some pictures of some boxes. They would have to open a pit and drop those boxes in. So it's a little bit of a combination of both.
Can I answer your question?
I have one.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I have a
Let me get him in. Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. My question would be, why is it that irrespective of the different alternatives that we are seeing, the village always has to pay for the telecom?
To remove the existing poles for the telecom?
Either if it's underground or cable, why doesn't AT&T or Comcast also pay for that recabling?
Well, unfortunately, unlike FPL, they do not have a program that offers that. You know, their standard is that they bring telecommunication on poles. And I know you're looking at me saying why, but I'm looking at you saying why. It just is the way it is, and that they just don't offer that.
Steve,
So they always do it on post and not underground?
No. They would not transition it with their cost.
They have an easement on the FPL pole lines. That's why they're there.
Well, most of our poles are actually AT&T.
Okay, but that utility is riding on FPL's pole because they have an easement right to ride on the pole. So if we take the poles down, because we go to underground system, we have to provide an easement for them to get there. That's why we have to pay.
But if we go to the SPP program where we will still have post, we will also be liable for the cost of rewiring on those posts?
Yeah.
Yes.
To move them from one pole to the other?
No, we would be underground.
Yeah.
No, but on the SPP program?
Yes, SSUP, yeah. Well, if we choose to underground everything, then we'd have to pay for it.
The SPC program would keep the poles up they would keep those poles up until, because
Everything's
AT&T
down.
and Comcast have a
Right.
right to use those poles.
Right.
They chop the
Right.
poles off and those poles stay.
Right.
And that's what happens.
That's correct.
That's it. And remember, so we're looking at two things here. FPL does that,
Right.
right? If we choose to go complete underground,
We take that
we
out,
want that.
Right.
but that's our
But we pay
choice.
for that.
And that's why we pay for it.
Mr. Mayor, I have something.
Is that clear? Hold on.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yes, although given that the technology, for example, AT&T is phasing out copper landlines and they are going into fiber, that means that eventually they will have to rewire everything. So,
Yeah, and I have a question about that too, because Hotwire has fiber into the island at the moment, correct?
You have a follow-up question?
Telecommunication.
Take the,
I'm sorry. The telecommunication companies pay something to Florida Power and Light for using their poles or not?
Well, it depends on whose pole it is. If I would imagine, I don't know exactly how the business model goes. AT&T has poles, and most of our poles are AT&T poles inside of Key Biscayne. And anybody that hangs on an AT&T pole, I would imagine they would charge some sort of fee.
You mean an FPL pole?
Excuse me?
FPL pole. Most are
No,
AT.
most of our poles are owned by AT&T.
You know, in my backyard
Yes.
I don't know in your backyard, but most of our poles
are AT.
in Key Biscayne are owned by AT&T.
I didn't know.
So it's also a source of revenue for them. So if Comcast is hanging off it, they pay. In some cases, maybe even FPL hangs off some of these poles as well.
There is a joint use agreement. That agreement, I don't know what the financial conditions are. I mean, honestly, I was never asked that. I guess it doesn't impact what I do. I never had the curiosity to inquire, but I can't tell you whether this financial, but there is an agreement called joint use agreement, and it's there to make sure utilities co-locate in the same pole, because can imagine FPL says that's my pole, you can't be on it, and then AT&T says, well, that's my pole, you can't be on it. We end up with a pole line on one side of the street for AT&T, one for FPL. So there is a joint use agreement. I don't know what the financial agreement portion of that is.
So for example, the pole on the back of my house has Florida Power and Light, has AT&T, has Comcast, and has some other, I don't know what the other. Well, besides that, you know,
And for the
that's a own pole, like a co-use pole.
Right.
But it's owned by AT&T.
I don't know your pole, but many of our poles are owned, most of our poles are owned by AT&T.
That's in the,
I have
so
nothing to
basically,
say.
the fact that FPNL will go underground will not take out the poles.
No, that's what they do.
unless we do it, we pay for it.
That's what they do. And if we want to go full underground, that's the part we'll have to do. And hopefully you see that cool picture disappearing.
Sure.
What about the boxes?
Question?
Will the boxes be any different if
Show the picture of the box.
if you take out the
Well, I guess this,
the feeders? Will the boxes be any different in front of the homes? Or will they be the same? Because you have transformers on
this
top.
would be the lateral box,
On
right?
top of the feeders.
That's it. And that one down the top bottom right is a
For the laterals, there'll be about 100 for the whole village, more or less.
Okay.
By your calculation, every 3 to 4 houses.
For zone one.
300 houses.
Zone one you're talking about. Zone
So the one on top is the one when we don't have a feeder?
Yeah, that's for a small artery, for example, right, that we're talking about.
Okay, that's a small artery, but the feeder box is the,
Yeah, the one, that is a connection point for things to be able to switch.
Okay.
Now, we're talking about redundancy, there'll be a box that'll provide redundancy for that feeder. Another way to be
it's
able
not
to
that.
tie two feeders together. and feed that out. That will come from a much larger.
Okay.
So you can see the vehicle behind it. I think that gives you a perspective of what the size of that box would look like. Now, that transformer, that's what that is, the green box, it will vary by size. So if you have a very large home, you're obviously going to need a larger transformer. So the size of the transformer will vary. It will not always be that size. Some will be bigger, some will be smaller. Like a business will require a 3-phase transformer, for example, and that would be a much larger box. And of course, you have to decide what that goes.
Okay. And do you know how many boxes will go in a typical street?
You already know.
Sure, depending on the load, meaning the size of the homes, right? If you have an extra large homes with an elevator, with a pool and everything else, then you may not be able to feed that many houses with one transformer. You may have to have more transformers. So that will vary significantly based on the load and the distance, right? You have a lot that is very large. Let's say if you have a lot that's 300 feet, you're probably gonna need one box for one house.
Our lots are normally 75 by 100, so there are some, every once in a while on the end of the streets that are a little bit bigger, but 75 by 100-foot lot for a street that has eight houses, I think, is what it is on the street.
Julian, you had the answer to that because you guys did the design.
Yeah, we have the answer for zone one. I don't know from the top of
Okay.
my head, but yeah.
What is it for zone one?
I don't know the exact number from the top of my head, but like by looking at it, we've got 1 every 4 houses. Like you have a property in the corner between four properties that usually 1.
Okay.
And I would like to know that the village is trying to locate this equipment on the right of way, but not in every instance we're gonna be able to put them in the right of way. There's sometimes that this equipment might have to go on private property, depending on the physical layout and the situation. But that's something.
And why would that be? Because I mean, it's 15 foot from the side of the road belongs to the village.
Right.
So how much more space would you need?
It depends of the situation, of the utilities, the storm water, like where the intersection is, the size. So we always, in zone 1, for example, 95% of the equipment is in the right of way. We were able to get in the right of way, but there is 5%. It's different situations. There's a tree. There is,
Okay.
intersections are not.
Just to avoid possible conflicts.
And in fact, just for the council.
My last question is, the boxes that you show here for Comcast and stuff, those are already here, right? I mean,
Some of them,
All
yeah.
of-
Yeah.
These pictures are all represent on
Go to the next.
not all of them, but the pad mount
Everything but
is
the
here on
glass.
the island, and then these are here on the island currently.
okay.
You don't need to elevate that?
You're gonna need to eventually.
You will.
Yeah, there will be.
You will.
There might possibly be the need to elevate in the future, yes.
3 feet.
It depends,
Depends on the river goes.
yes.
In the flood threat. So I think,
Hold on, we have
Mr. President.
another question.
I just like to clarify something, I mean, because I'm little confused with the table and between hybrid and the SSP done by FPL. Sorry, I don't know if it's working. We have the map. What we have in this map, we have the area that is already underground.
Yes.
In violet or lilac. The yellow one is what is right now with poles, but is what in the table is called lateral, right? Right? And the feeders are the red ones. So, I like to confirm something. With the hybrid model, which is paid partly by the village is shared FPL and FPL doing the
Right.
feeders and
Right.
okay, in that case, village is doing the underground because the idea is to have everything in yellow underground. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
In the model that the SPP or
Right.
is paying for, I mean, if we go into the program and so village is not going to not village, the taxpayer are not going to be paying for that in the same
FPL.
way FPL is going to do
Bury the laterals
the lateral. So
only.
the same as an hybrid. I mean, it's the area that is in yellow. So we are going to have everything underground, and the red ones is going to be on poles. Is that correct? The red ones here are the feeders.
Right.
So, great.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Partially correct. You're very close.
Okay, yeah, because the table is like they change the words and it's not that clear. Let's see.
So your understanding is very good of what was going on. So the last one that FPL pays, the difference. The difference between the two, it's going to be that FPL is going to put underground its own facilities, meaning facilities that belong to Florida Power and Light. So even if you choose the last option, it does not cover your telecom, your telecommunications. So there is no real, there's a high cost option, a middle cost option, and a lower cost option. But the one on the right, FPL, will do everything you just described to our facilities, but it does not include telecommunications. That's the main difference.
Are you familiar with the Coral Gables approach? Because in Coral Gables, they also include the AT&T, Comcast or AT&T, I don't remember exactly, is underground also at the same time with FPL. And in Coral Gables, they are using the program. So,
I am a resident, so I'm very familiar.
okay,
So
great.
it's not. FPL will cover its own facilities, but not telecom. If the residents of Coral Gables want to put that underground, then they have to coordinate that with those
Okay.
utilities to make it
But
happen.
in Coral Gables, so the residents, the taxpayers are paying for the telecom.
Well, telecom.
But the
If they choose to
undergrounding,
go underground.
the undergrounding of FPL is doing by the program.
Right, but what I explained is that it's not everything. And it's only based on the criteria that the Public Service Commission, PSC, takes, right?
Okay, so if
So, you have all of Coral Gables, and maybe they're doing this little bit here. They're not doing, in a program way, they're not doing everything.
So, if we are lucky, we are going to be covered by the program. If there's some problem, we are going to have part
To be
of
decided.
the program to be decided. But why then we don't, in terms of the village, isn't a good idea to try to start with a program, and if anything is not covered, the village can, instead of just choosing from the very beginning the hybrid program where we are going to be paying for all the yellow parts. That's the part I don't understand.
Isn't there a time consideration for that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yes, so
They
we,
may do it whenever they get to it.
so that
not-
goes, yeah, so the important one is that bottom right box right there. So that's the SSUP program, Constructible Complexity and Timeline. That is an FPL or PSC-led timeline.
So we don't get to choose.
And that is based on a calculation that they make on the reliability
20
of our
years.
lines.
Right.
We don't
I heard
control that.
2060
That
at
could
one point.
be decades plus.
That would be
to
the
get done.
negative. It could be 20, 30 years before you get it all done.
I do have one point that I'd like to make.
yes, on that part I understand, but well, okay. I mean, we
There's
don't know. That's something in question mark in there. We don't know what's going to happen.
For the cost and then get reimbursed whenever they decide to reimburse them.
Everyone's looking at Steve.
That's not a program that they offer right now.
There's one consideration that has not been made at all tonight, and I think it's a very serious one, and it's the safety of our residents. There have been wires down, and there have been fires, and that is a very substantial issue for us to consider.
Especially when it's flooded.
Even when there's nothing, even when there's no wind. I've had friends who've been called in emergencies. I've had friends who've had fires in their houses. So this is a real issue. And for me, safety is up a little bit higher than aesthetics. Safety is primary concern.
I totally agree with you, uh, Councilman Stoner, because the wire in the back of my house have fallen twice on the fence, and the fence had got electrocuted, and almost a dog died on that.
It happens a lot more than we realize, so.
Yeah, I
think that's
just,
a-
You wanted to?
well, I mean, mine is really more of a, I want to talk about the big elephant in the room here, which obviously has been the ongoing discussion about the overall undergrounding of all the infrastructure that we need. I know today we're honing in to, with the electrical undergrounding, and I want to state, I think there was something mentioned that I approved it, that was part of the approval. Councilman Bracken was here and Mr. Parapar was at the committee as well, and yes, we did approve it. And we approved it in the context that it was provided. We approved it in 2018. Goes without saying that prices of construction have increased substantially. And then after that, in 2022, the vision plan started, which really required a significant, one of the pillars of that vision plan, I remember approving it in council, was to, required a significant overarching need to strengthen our stormwater systems. It was part of our overall vision plan. So now we have an underground system for electrical, and now we have an underground system for stormwater, and we have so much money that we can actually spend. So I want to clarify, because I know there's been, there's a lot of comments made that we're moving in one direction or not. That is simply not accurate. I want to state that my position has always been to protect the residents, the investment that we have in the village, and to ensure that both the undergrounding and the stormwater programs are implemented responsibly, safely, and effectively. So I really wish that we come together in this critical time where we have to make such a significant investment and stop, thinking that we're trying to kill something or that we're trying to move in a direction. Folks, what we're really trying to do is balance the significant infrastructure needs that we have. It's nobody, this is years since 2015, since 2009, nothing was done. All that they did was talk. And if you go back, we did a stormwater master plan in 2015. I'm sorry, but that council did not implement that stormwater master plan. What you're seeing here is action. We want to take action, and we need to balance this infrastructure. It's not that we're trying to do one thing or trying to do the other. We're trying to do all of that we can with the money that we have. For example, this thing was $46,800,000 at that point in time. What are we talking right now for a bill? 70 million?
Between 70 and 90
70,
million.
okay, so there you go. I mean, right there. You got double the price. This was done pre-pandemic. It's not that we're trying to kill things or we're trying to move in one direction with one thing or the other. No, we're just trying to balance out the needs that we have in infrastructure, which is woefully inadequate. And I've said this from the beginning. So let's work together. Instead of just pointing fingers and blaming each other and saying that we're moving in one direction or the other, let's just work together. And we can do it, but let's just find a way.
All right, let's bring this to an
Thank
end.
you.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. That's a good transition. Look, I mentioned earlier on that, my intent tonight was to facilitate a conversation, because I think it's really important that we have an opportunity to have this conversation, because everyone knows this is critical infrastructure. We hope coming out of here, we do have a recommendation that you all can give us some direction going forward. I think it was brought up before, whether I have an interest. I do not have an interest one way or another. I just want to make sure we do what the residents and the council would like us to do. One of the reasons why I did bring up the hybrid model is when a company offers us a $15 to $20 million investment, I think it's prudent that we take that in consideration, because not many people would do that. So if we could, Mayor, if you'd like to jump to the end, this is the.
Oh, and by the way, I would also say that I think that people have looked a little bit differently at this since that July 24th situation when 2 feeders went down. I think that has given some people pause, and so it's also part of the conversation here.
No, I certainly agree. So, I think, and we assumed coming into this that probably the SSUP was not the direction that the council would want to go. If it is, obviously we can add it back on. But our recommendation is to do a deeper dive into the full undergrounding and compare it to the hybrid. This is when we would come back with more of the detail that, tonight we really wanted to stay high. Because you can even see when we try to stay high, we got low. We're really trying to understand the direction that you want to go. So that would be our recommendation. We do a deeper analysis on that. Obviously, we got to do a cost modeling as to what that would be for us, FPL.
And you want to answer the questions that were raised
We want to
here
answer all the
about,
questions that were here.
about the
Yes, sir.
reliability and the percentages and what it
All that
means.
stuff. And then we want to make sure we have stakeholder engagement. We want to make sure the community is involved in this along the way. So that would be my recommendation from coming out of tonight. Obviously, if you want to provide some guidance, obviously we can't provide specific direction, but we can definitely take some guidance.
Okay, so we have the underground all and the hybrid model, and I think what we're talking about is providing more in-depth data so that we can make a better decision.
Comparable data with our conditions. And also what I would ask is to give us a sense of where the problem is, for the most part. Let's start addressing where the problem is. If it's a substation issue, we're about to invest in undergrounding because we think 38% of it, we think of it, it's really the cost of our power outages. That's 38% true. Where's the other?
Well, that was 38%
62%.
true 2 years ago. And I think we've actually done a good job because we've done a good job taking it down.
And I'm so happy
We'd have to get
that we're
updated
evolving
information.
on the subject, and I hope that we have more evolved data.
Right.
All right, do we have consensus?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move towards analyzing these two options a little bit more so we can come back and make a better decision.
Can we
We'll
get
do
some
it.
information on downed wires and fires and things, just?
Of course.
We'll see what we can find on that. A lot of those times those aren't reported.
Well, the fire
but
department should.
yeah, if it raises to the level that the fire department would go, we'd be able to pull that information. Sometimes they're not called.
But FPL would have that information too if you
They
called it in.
No, they have to fix the wire.
Yeah.
they'll have some of it. Yes. Again.
Just, the only thing I would caution is, we got a lot of wire down calls. Sorry, we do get a lot, I'm sure the fire department, I should say, not we. The fire department does get a lot of wire down calls and because people think that a wire on a pole belongs to Florida Power and Light. And as we mentioned, there are 3 or 4 other people who may be in that pole. So a wire down call to a fire department may not always be a Florida Power and Light wire down.
So it may not be as dangerous as a possible electrocution or fire, but still a wire down, and since no one knows, we have to take all the safety measures, so it would be important to know how frequently we are
Right,
experiencing.
yeah, it's just a
Right.
subset
If it's
of.
sparking,
Right,
if it's
that data.
sparking, Nancy, it's a
Right.
FPL wire.
Sparking.
If it's sparking.
Stay away. If it comes from on high, that's when you want to stay away. A little bit lower, those are the telecom lines.
All right.
Just stay away from
Thank you all for being here with us, and we appreciate it, and see you next time.